Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with LA-based jazz keyboardist, composer, arranger, and producer Scott Kinsey. He opened up about his newest 2021 CD called Adjustments, his musical history, and living through COVID. As a young 1991 Berklee grad, armed with a bachelor's degree in piano performance, this Michigan native took his place at the forefront of electric jazz immediately and was snatched up by the seminal fusion band called Tribal Tech. Throughout his time, he's amassed an extensive list of sideman credits, and he's got a great story. Enjoy.
Thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, man.
Let's start off and talk about the elephant in the room, and it really is about, we're coming out of a pandemic. We've gone through COVID. You have a brand new CD coming out. What does it mean to have this come out now during a time where you can actually have the opportunity to perform this live, and just the idea of having an album finally come out when there's latitude for you to promote it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, actually the album came out about a month ago. So yeah, the album is out. And, as far as being able to tour, it's a good question. I mean, whether we'd be able to tour or not, I don't really even know if it has all that much to do with the pandemic. But, I mean, of course that plays into it and makes it a lot more difficult. But we hope to get out there and do some more gigs, as soon as possible. We did one kind of debut gig at the Baked Potato, and that went really well. And we're just, hoping to get back out and get to some actual touring happening.
I hear about the Baked Potato a lot, and last week I was interviewing somebody that has verifiable proof that every time before a show, Ringo Starr orders a baked potato in his dressing room. So I will never.
I can't doubt that that's true, and I've heard that myself a couple of times on different occasions. So I'm pretty sure you're right about that.
So I'm always going to think about the baked potato differently, like a little earring dangling from it, or something's going to come into my mind.
Yeah.
So
well, you have to go there sometime and get a potato because they're amazing.
Yeah. I would love to. I was talking to someone a while back that did some time in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I'm like, did you ever walk into a bar and have that Billy Joel song play? And they're like, what song are you talking about? I was like, it's Allentown, man. I mean, you're there. Talk to me a little bit about what you hope the audience response is to this album. Those that download or buy this, what do you hope they get from this experience?
I hope that they just find it to be an album that they want to listen to and keep coming back and always, first of all, keep listening to it, and second of all, find new things in the music every time that you do. Because I think there's plenty of stuff in there to find, It's not overly dense, but I think there's enough information that if you listen to it multiple times, you'll hear different things. And I hope that that's an experience that people have, because I always find that fun, when I listen to an album and I hear new things every time.
So talk to me a little bit about your upbringing. How did you get the jazz bug, and even the music bug to play?
My dad is a musician, and my mom was a music minor in college, so we had a lot of music around the house, even though I came from Owasso, Michigan, which is not exactly a music capital of the world. It's a small town in the middle of Michigan between Flint and Lansing, and there's just not a whole lot, at least at the time that I was growing up, there wasn't a whole lot of music happening around. But my dad, being super into music, and also he worked at the local radio station, and he was just always involved, and he played keyboards just like I do, so I guess where I got the idea. He was always interested in, the new technology of, the instruments, whatever was happening. So he would, always go to the music store and find whatever was new, like drum machines or organs or keyboards or whatever. And especially since he saw that I was getting interested in it, he would always kind of bring home whatever the latest cool thing was. So that really got my interest going. And as far as the music itself, I just remember when I was pretty young, and I heard this jazz. I was listening to the local jazz station just for something to listen to, and I remember this track came on. First of all, it was like a big band track, but it was all played on keyboards, which I thought was, first of all, really interesting because I'd never heard that before. But the other thing was, I went to the piano and I tried to pick out what I was hearing, and I couldn't find even one note that worked. You know what I mean? It was just I was just trying to find those sounds, those chords. They were so mysterious and so different that I guess that just piqued my interest, and I knew I wanted to learn about jazz, but I just had no idea where to start or what to do. But that's I think where my, the first kind of moment where I went, oh God, what is that? That's really interesting. And then of course I heard Charlie Parker. Just all those lines really knocked me out. So that was kind of my earliest experience.
So upping the ante a little bit here, what was the first live show that you saw that really blew you away and made you think, I'd love to be up there someday doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the Doobie Brothers.
Nice.
My dad took me to see the Doobie Brothers when I was like, I don't know, 10 or 8 or, something like that, really young. It was probably my first or second concert ever. And it was really incredible. Michael McDonald was with them at the time, and they had 2 drummers, and it was a big group, and that really got me. And then the other concert I saw really young that blew me away was Ray Charles. He was just incredible. And so, between those 2 things, I kind of had an idea already that that's what I wanted to do, but that really did it, hearing those guys.
And you had quite a mentor in Joe. Talk to me a little bit about, you were a protege of his. What was it like? What kind of lessons and, how did those teachings reverberate throughout your professional career?
Yeah, I got to meet Joe in a very odd way, I wanted to meet him, and when I came out to Los Angeles, I thought Scott Henderson would introduce me, but it turned out that, Scott was playing with Joe's band, and when he left the band, he felt like maybe Joe was mad at him or something, and he wasn't really in touch with Joe at that point, so it didn't happen right away. And then I just had made friends with the guy who worked at the lighting store about a block from where I was living in Sherman Oaks. I would just go there sometimes. I was teaching at Musicians Institute pretty much right when I came out to LA, and after I got done teaching, I would go over there and just hang out with this guy. His name's Jim Gatch, and he was a saxophone player. Well, he is a saxophone player and a keyboard player. And he said, "Hey, man, I noticed the way you play," because he just come and heard me play somewhere with Tribal Tech, and he was like, you must be into Joe Zawinul and stuff. And I said, yeah, I'm definitely into Joe. I've never met him. I'd like to meet him, but, it hasn't happened. He said, well, it's a funny thing, but every year around this time, he calls me and has me come out and, decorate his Christmas tree. And if you'd want to come out there with me sometime, you'd be welcome to. So I was like, what are you talking about? But I said, yeah, definitely. If he calls you. They said, yeah, I just heard from him. He said, come on out on Saturday. You want to come with me? So I'm like, definitely. The next thing I know, we're halfway, I'm halfway up a Christmas tree. He's all the way at the top, and Joe's at the bottom going yeah, can you move that ornament a little bit to the left, or whatever. Talk about surreal and bizarre. I never thought I would meet Joe because of a Christmas tree, but there we were. And, I didn't want that meeting to end, so, I just thought of anything I could, any stupid idea I could come up with to say, so I asked him something about, the vocoder that he was using or something, and he said, yeah, come on inside, I'll show you. So the next thing I know, we were in the house, and he was hooking things up, and it was really incredible. But Joe became a really good friend, and, eventually he would just call me and say, hey, what are you doing? Can you come over? I got a new keyboard. Maybe you know it, and, we can fool around with it or whatever, So that was really great. But you know what? You mentioned, what kind of lessons did he give you? Joe wasn't that kind of guy. And even if I asked him something directly, he would more likely yell at me than anything else. One time I said, what do you think about when you're playing those chords? Because, he had this mysterious harmony that he would get into, and it was just so interesting. And I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I asked him what he thought about when he was playing that. And he just kind of yelled at me. He was like, I don't think about nothing. You know that, So I was like, oh, yeah, right. Okay, I'll shut up now.
That's awesome. Well, and that's the thing about when you get around people that have been around for a long time that we would consider legends and luminaries. Most of the time, it's not directly them saying things. It's just the way they are as a person. And, you kind of feed off of that. Yeah.
So. Oh, 100%. Just being around him and just seeing the way that he interacted with music, the way that he, when he worked with the synthesizer, he turned the knobs really slowly, and he really listened. He'd close his eyes and he'd really listen to the sound. And he also said stuff like, hey man, if you touch a keyboard, don't just bang on it. If you're just checking to see if it's on, always be in the mode where you're making music. Yeah. Always be in that musical mode. Don't just hit the keys ever, And I realized, man, he's right. You should always be in this music making mode, or it's just a million things that I picked up from just being around him. He's coming from, when I think about the differences in generation and the generations between me now and people that are 20 years younger than me, Well, that was the same thing with me and Joe. Joe was like a couple, 20 years older at least, maybe more. And it's like, he really came from a different time, really a different world almost, coming from bebop and coming from Europe in those days. And then, getting involved in bebop is one of the only white, bebop pianists at that time, playing with all the black groups and really actually making a mark on the music too, which was remarkable that he was able to do all that. That's a completely different world. And,
Absolutely.
to think because I can start to relate to him, like where we are right now, I can relate to him. But when you think about it, coming from where he was coming from, it was another whole deal.
You get to wake up every day and be a musician. You get to create. What is the greatest part about being a professional musician for you?
Well, in a way, just what you just said. I get to literally sit down and dream up whatever I want to make, and that's what I do. That's my job, is to come up with something different, creative, interesting, not just for me, but for other people, hopefully. I just get to use my imagination. I can just sit there and close my eyes and think, okay, what would I like to hear, or what would I like to create? And it's really completely up to me. And I guess that might be the best thing about it. Plus I get to interact with Meredith, who, is awesome vocalist and bass player. So that's fun too.
The one thing I was going to say real quick about Joe, of everything
Mm-hmm.
that I've ever heard about Miles, I've always heard first and foremost he was a listener. That was what he did.
Right. Right.
And there were so many mutations of story and metaphor that would go into all of the things that made him who he was, but that was paramount to what he was and how he
Absolutely.
was. As the world opens up and live music begins again, lots of people are starting to release music that's been created during the quarantine. I'm curious, What did you learn during quarantine about yourself that maybe you didn't realize that's going to make you stronger as you promote this album and go on into the live environment again?
That's a good question. I don't know what I've really learned about myself during the pandemic. I had a lot more alone time and sort of alone time. I was with my girlfriend the whole time, and, that we were isolation partners, and we came from, we were in LA, and then we were in Colorado, and back and forth a little tiny bit, when we could travel. But I would like to say that I realized I didn't need so many people around me, but in a way I still had people around me because I would send them tracks and, they would play on it in their studio. That's a really good question, but it's hard for me to answer.
What do you hope we all collectively realize about the power of live music as we head back into it? Something we haven't been around for a long time.
That's for sure. Bottom line is I definitely missed live music, and I definitely missed playing music. And I realized when I came back and started doing gigs again that, holy crap, it took some doing to get my head around it, because after a year and a half or 2 years not playing, that's a distance. You've gone a ways, and to suddenly have to play again, then you kind of have to think, well, all right, so how did I plug that stuff in? What were those notes? What is all this? What are we doing? So it felt funny at first. It felt we all felt a little bit rusty, getting back into it. But I found it in a way, it does give you another perspective, and it makes you appreciate it more. And it also makes everything a lot fresher in a way too. And it kind of erases in a way everything that you were doing in the music before, because you just can't remember it. And that's a problem sometimes you have now, is that not now, but before, would be if you did a gig yesterday and you had a gig today, you remember yesterday pretty well, and it's hard to erase that and come up with completely new things sometimes. But after 2 years, you don't remember anything. So it's it's all new. So I guess in a way that was really a cool thing about it, is that it felt really new. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but
you did. Yeah. So everyone has a perception or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans. But ultimately, you have a perception of you. You live your life. Who do you think you are?
That's another interesting but difficult question to answer, because everybody sees you for somebody a little bit different depending on how well they know you. I'm definitely a musician, and I'm definitely always searching for, the next sounds that I want to play. I'm searching for the next instruments I want to play. I'm always thinking about music. Music's always on my mind, and I'm definitely
Adorable.
adorable. She says, "All right, I'm adorable."
Yeah.
That's who.
Well, this is the problem with this question is that there's this notion that it has to be more elaborate. Sometimes it's just really simple,
Right,
and it
right.
really just kind of is almost a guttural reply. It's like getting woken up in the middle of the night and like asking a serious question. Your cerebral is going to take over. You're not going to have a minute to be like, all right, how do I filter this? It's just like, that's it.
Yeah.
What comes from the guts the way it is. So, I mean,
Right.
for Ringo, it would just be baked potato. That would be it. He could just go on about the bake. And I was going to tell you, too, the interesting thing you were saying about Joe, about how we all run into each other. The reason why, the precursor in that interview to how I got to the baked potato with Ringo was, there was somebody that told me years ago that they went on the road with Jackie McLean, and all he wanted was an ice cream cone in Italy. Like, his whole thing was going out late at night and getting an ice cream cone. And it's just amazing how you think about these iconic people and they get humanized, because I can see him with this big, huge, like stacked ice cream, like scoops on his thing. And it's like, my God, that's Jackie McLean. That's one of the baddest men in jazz ever. But he's just sitting there eating an ice cream cone in Italy, and it probably means more to him than a ballad, So
yeah.
There you go.
Well, that's true. I mean, we're all people at the end of the day, and I mean, music is important to us, but we all do a lot of other things, and we're all interested in other things. So you're right. It's like if I go to Italy, I just want to eat pasta.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking about. And it's like, if I'm in Japan, it's all about whatever. It's all about Japanese curry or whatever you like. So. Yeah, for him, I guess it's ice cream, and I can see that.
Scott, thank you for opening up. Good luck with the album, the return to the stage. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate the interview, and thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Michigan, Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Scott for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.